so we can go ahead and get started. This is going to be an informative session. If you have any questions, you can drop it in the chat. And, feel free to come off mute if you have any questions that you want to ask during the session. So again, my name is Natasha Jones. I'm the CEO of HD Screening and Laboratory. I'm a registered nurse by trade. And what we do at HD Screening and Laboratory is we provide medical compliance for DOT industries. In addition to that, we have drug testing, physicals, and we provide corporate wellness programs to Fortune 500 companies. I'm also the director of mental health and wellness at the African American Women in Trucking Association. And we provide those same services over there. In addition, we are in clinical research on that side of the house. And we are introducing initiatives for health equity for truck drivers and more. So today we have a very, very special guest, Charlize Zavaglia. And I just wanted to read her bio because she's very impressive with her background and skills. So her company is called Holistic Haulers, and she has a groundbreaking initiative aimed at enhancing the health, safety, and overall well-being of truckers on the road, with a special focus on ergonomic and biomechanical solutions, OSHA training, and tailored safety programs for women in the trucking industry. Founded by Charlize Zavaglia, a safety engineer and advocate with firsthand trucking experience, the organization offers services like injury prevention programs, advanced first aid courses, and a specialized trucker's guide to women's holistic health. Holistic Haulers is committed to creating a safer, healthier, and more empowering environment for our drivers, paving the way for innovation and inclusivity in the trucking industry. With that being said, like I said, she has a very impressive background, and I just wanted to know, how did you get started doing this?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to help people in the industry. My goal was, I saw out there being on the highway, there's a huge gap that drivers, are missing here. We're missing a lot of resources, being on the road, and we're also missing that aspect of ergonomics and mental health wellness on the highway. And I did my engineering degree on the highway while I was driving. I did my focus was on ergonomics and human factors. So that is looking at the inside of the cab, how drivers can have a more comfortable ride, whether if that's using driving gloves or that's using kinesthetic tape or other like lumbar support and decompression methods, as well as introducing psychological safety to the industry where leadership allows drivers to feel safe to go up to them and say, hey, you know what, I'm not okay. I need some help. Do we have some mental health resources? Do we have some health and wellness resources that you can provide? So really, closing that gap that we're missing on the highway, just trying to hopefully extend the life of drivers and also see the youth and other diverse groups like women enter into the industry because of the changes, because it is hard being on the road as a woman or, someone younger as well, so just being able to introduce that and close that gap of health and wellness that we need out here on the road.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you have like a background a little bit further than just being a long haul driver. Like, how did you see the correlation between being a driver and then jumping into this health and wellness?
Well, I'm seeing that, the home time. So when you're a driver, you have home time. And I'm seeing that a lot of the drivers, they don't have enough home time to go in and say, I'm going to go see my doctor. I'm going to go and see my psychiatrist. I go and see, a mental health therapist. So what they need is someone that's available at the time that they're free. So I saw, okay, I can do, my education. I can format it to where I do my education online. And when clinicals come around, I can go ahead and drive. And, the days that I'm in clinicals, I'll have to be in school. But the days that I'm not, I can still drive and be out there firsthand. That's what I want to do to make sure I'm still that support. I'm still on the road and showing them, hey, you know what? I am attending my health science studies, but I'm also out here with you guys. I understand what it is, and I want to make sure that, we close this gap, that we make a difference out here for everybody, and be that, basically the clinician for the drivers out here on the highway, both in primary care and also psychology as well.
Awesome. So I wanted to backtrack a little bit because I'm picking up on a little bit of words that you're saying, but for our audience, right? You're saying that you have clinicals, right?
Yeah.
So how did we go from engineering to clinicals to truck driving? Like, tell me how that evolved.
Yeah. So when I was doing my engineering degree, when I was on the highway, I saw that safety was limited. And in saying that, it's like, okay, so you're able to do the biomechanics and ergonomics for the drivers, and I'm able to put those programs together right now. But as drivers, we need more. We have this thing that during the 9th hour, if you're on the highway, you get this pull in your neck. You start getting, some pain in your arms, you get some pain in your legs, you get this thing called driver's knee, and biomechanics, ergonomics only goes so far. And that's where we need to step in, as a clinician, whether if it's a nurse practitioner or an MD, also the psychological aspect. I mean, we have drivers out here that are dealing with divorces. I personally dealt with a divorce in 2022 when I was on the road. So going through that firsthand myself, and dealing with the stresses and dealing with everything that came along with that, I completely understand, how it is on the highway, and how, you need that support, that mental health support. You need both. Engineering only covers one section for ergonomics, biomechanics, and safety. And now you're looking at a whole another aspect with health and psychology. So that I was like, you know what? I'm going to take it a step further and really provide what these drivers need. They really need that extra step. And coming from a driver, I think they would appreciate that, a driver to driver, health and psychology services.
Interesting. So is there like any services available? Like, because I know there's owner operators and then there's company drivers. Like, is there any services like that right now? And if so, what is the quality of those services that they're offering that made you say we need something more?
Mm-hmm. So a lot of the services right now that are provided, I mean, they're great. Some of them are covered by the insurance for the company drivers. Not, we have the owner operators, so that's coming in out of pocket. Another thing, these programs are developed by scientists, by, health professionals that have studied, they have the medical background, the psychological background, but they never been on the highway. So that is something that I was like, okay, to really truly understand, you have to be boots on the ground on the road, go to the truck stops. You have to understand the lifestyle, driving for 11 hours and what that causes physically and mentally. And being in that driver's seat, gives that extra that the drivers need, where it's like, I do understand you. I was right there. Like, I understand how it is, when you're hungry, you're tired, you're going down the 40, it's a stretch of road and you just want to stop and you can't. When you can't call anybody because you don't have friends or family that are awake at that time, because you're, let's say, running at 1, 2 in the morning because that's just your schedule that day. So really understanding that and providing, working around those schedules, and being that support coming from the driver that's been, on the highway.
Interesting. So it sounds like you have the experience as a long haul driver. You were an engineer, so you were able to see the technical side of things. And then you saw the health and wellness, you experienced it firsthand. And then you went to school to become a medical doctor. Are you currently
I'm in school.
in school?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm in school. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
University of
So
Arizona doing
that's awesome. Yeah, so with that, I just wanted to highlight that because this is not
Thank you.
just, someone who is just doing some research and putting some things together. You're actually making a difference and you're in a program to help further those initiatives and changes from the top, right? So, um, me as a nurse, I deal with OSHA all the time. When we think of
Hmm.
OSHA in the medical field, we think of bloodborne pathogens, we think of, noise and all those things. But the trucking industry, what I found is when I go into these different warehousing sectors where they have the warehouse, where they don't quite fall underneath of DOT, however, they have company drivers, right? They still have to abide by that. So OSHA is really big in the warehouse sector, but how can we marry the two? Like, what type of things are you seeing in on the road or in the industry when it comes to OSHA? And how can we get our truck drivers to understand that this is something that they need to take into account as well?
Hmm. So, doing the OSHA 501 training for the trainer in OSHA, I've learned a lot. Like I said, I'm a lifelong learner. Being on the road, I mean, you can see that there is one huge thing that we need out here, and that's ergonomics. Being on the highway, and that is a portion in OSHA. It's not in the mandatory section, in the electives. Um, so, having that discussion for ergonomics and looking at what drivers can take on the road for comfort is huge. Another part of OSHA that is being introduced in general industry, which trucking falls into, is mental health, mental health and drug abuse. So, really having that conversation with the drivers and allowing for vulnerability, which is huge in this industry. We need to be able to allow our drivers to open up and express what they're feeling so we can be able to be that support, because as a leader you are the support for the drivers. you know and in terms of more like mandatory subjects that you would get in an OSHA 10 or OSHA 30, I would look at loading and unloading. If that's what your drivers are doing, make sure that they're lifting correctly, they have that type of training, as well as being able to, if you're running flatbed, making sure that you understand how to get on and off of the surface without falling, without injuring yourself. As well as if you're running hazardous materials, are they familiar with the SDS? Are they familiar with Chapter 8 with personal protective equipment for that? Personal protective equipment in general, do they know how to use that? Do they know fire prevention? We have fire extinguishers, it's mandatory in the semi trucks, but do they know how to use it? Is it accessible to them? Have they ever deployed a fire extinguisher, and are they ready to take on that if that emergency should happen? You know, so I think those are very important topics in OSHA.
Excellent. So, for someone who just came on, we were talking about just basically how OSHA and trucking is not different. It's all in the same, and how mental health and wellness is a big aspect of OSHA. And you said this is a new finding for OSHA, or this has always been for like OSHA 10 and 30 training?
It started to come out. I heard it earlier this year. One of my connections on LinkedIn was discussing that mental health is coming into OSHA. And when I sat for my 501 trainer, my trainer card, the professor was discussing that as well. And we had a really good conversation, a really in-depth conversation about how mental health and trucking would tie in, and how it's necessary, it's dire that we discuss this with our drivers because they're on the highway for so long, you know.
Interesting.
Mhm.
So, I wanted to go into a little bit more of like injury prevention,
Mhm.
and then we'll work our way back around to like mental health and things like that. So you mentioned that there are certain drivers that have to deal with loading and unloading. What kind of tips would you have for them to, not get injuries on the road?
Mhm. I would have a proper lifting program in place. I would have proper standard, like the company developing standards for the drivers as how to, if they're securing their own cargo, you know, how to safely do that, how to safely lift, how to safely maneuver, you know, whatever they're moving, whether if it may be, you know, if they're doing flatbed, tying down rebar, or if they're, you know, securing boxes, you know, pallets in the back of their dry van. So just knowing the proper ways of lifting, because it's more seen, you know, in general industry, you know, how to lift in the warehouse and how to not injure yourself. But we talk about drivers and, you know, we talk more on DOT and regulations. So just also focusing that on proper lifting techniques, strapping, ways that they can prevent injury. Because sometimes, you know, you're in a rush, you're trying to get out on the highway and, you know, you want to get out there quick, throw the chain, throw the strap, you know, improperly lift, and maybe you don't feel it that day, but, you know, a couple days down the highway, you start to get that, you know, pain in your back or, you know, pain in your neck, and just making sure that you can properly have a safe lifting program in place for your drivers, and policies and procedures on strapping cargo.
Awesome. So as a registered nurse, my background was in trauma, emergency medicine, and critical care. And I can't even tell you how many times have I seen like truck drivers come in from injuries from the strap popping them in their head, or, you know, degloving because something ripped their skin off and all these things. So it's very important that you take those, what is it, extra 5-10 minutes to make sure everything is secure before you go with your load. So those are great points. So now with these ergonomics, like the biomechanical reconstruction program, like what does that entail? I don't know if we have any owner operators on the call, or, you know, they'll see the replay. What can you give them as far as, you know, information to tailor this program efficiently for their workers?
Of course. So what Holistic Haulers does is that we do the biomechanical reconstruction of a current injury that's trending with your company with drivers, or potential injuries that can happen. And that being from strains, that being from aches, that being from falling, that being from anything that you could experience being on the highway, you know, driving for long periods of time, sitting for long periods of time, not stretching for long periods of time. And also, you know, other things that you may be exposed to, you know, on the road, if you're, like I said, unloading or loading at the warehouse, or if you're strapping and unstrapping. So looking at the proper either personal protective equipment, or if we can engineer it out, you know, but we're looking at more on the biomechanics and ergonomics. We're going to be looking at certain items that we can use to prevent the injury. Like I said, with strains and all that, if you're driving on the highway for 11 hours, you want to look at some type of lumbar support, because the seat, and this was some of the research that I did looking at how the air ride seat is developed, and it was tested for 8 hours. So it has not been tested for 11 hours, which is what we run on the highway. So yeah, being able to provide that extra support, you know, that we need, either if it's lumbar support, decompression. We have also decompression program that we developed for spinal decompression. That is through Mayo Clinic, and all the, you know, the developments and the research were through PubMed. So it's all medically backed. All the research is medically backed through that. And we provide that to trucking companies and owner operators. Everything can be done in the cab, along the trailer, you know, on your rest breaks. And, you know, that can be integrated into the ergonomics program to prevent injuries. So we show how the injury can happen with the biomechanical reconstruction. With the biomechanical reconstruction, and then we show you how to prevent it, whether if that's going towards a decompression program or going towards using some sort of PPE, like a pair of driving gloves, showing you how to apply kinesthetic tape or increase blood flow, since you're sitting in one position for 11 hours at a time, and looking at lumbar supports for the seat to, you know, counteract the vibration from the highway.
Interesting.
Mhm.
So As far as when you talk about the ergonomics and your program that you offer at Holistic Haulers, what could you provide for like dispatchers, right? Because they're the one who are really setting up where someone goes from point A to point B, right? So what should what kind of what would you say to them actually, when they're trying to book these loads for the truck drivers to keep these safety tips in mind?
Well, one of the things that I also like to introduce is learning-based safety. What happens with dispatchers is that they are not on the highway, and what I would say is that let's collaborate and let's work as a team, with the dispatcher saying, what's going on out there, driver? How's the weather? How do you feel? Are you okay? Let's move past, just dispatching loads to actually, talking to the driver, understanding, hey, is everything okay? Are you feeling okay? Do you need to take a little rest break? Planning accordingly, because sometimes there is adverse weather. And if the driver's out there and feels stressed to get to from point A to point B, they're going to rush, and you have that stress, that anxiety. So there's that mental aspect into it, mental health. If they need to take a rest break, for whatever it may be, if they need to get some fresh air, if they're tired, if they need to stretch, they have some pain, they need to have that time to take that little bit, rest break, whether it be 10 minutes or so. Like, of course, we have our 30-minute break after 8 hours, but sometimes we need a little extra time, just in case we have those situations. So just understanding the environment of the highway and, what we go through as drivers, promoting that communication, that conversation, opening that up, and really connecting, both the environment of the dispatcher and then the environment of the driver, bringing it together and closing that gap.
Awesome. We have a dispatcher and an RN on the call. Awesome. Welcome.
Nice.
If you guys have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat or come off mute. You can ask questions at any point during this webinar. So while we're waiting for questions or whatever, so this environment just sounds like really rough. So is this one of the reasons why you developed a program for women in trucking?
Most definitely. It can get rough from the weather, like I said, from the weather to the stress. We go throughout here with the lack of resources that we have. Sometimes some of the truck drivers do not have family or friends to talk to, and they have, I'm not saying every dispatcher, we have some wonderful dispatchers out there, but some of the dispatchers, just book the load. Some of the office staff, just check in real quick, and it goes from that, and you don't hear anything the rest of the day. So you have all of those hours to think, all of those hours to be out there. Maybe you need some support. Maybe you're going through, something personal that you may need to have a conversation with someone you can trust. And that's why I want to open up that conversation for the leadership, to come in and really communicate with the drivers, see what's going on out there, learn about the environment. If they have the time, it would be great to do a ride along, just to really, step into the shoes and really be out there on the road. So let's say driver says, hey, I need a little bit of a break right now. I need to stop. I can't continue. We got adverse weather. Dispatcher, office staff automatically knows, I know what you're talking about. I've been out there with you. We'll work this out. And I know there's deadlines. I know there's everything, that comes with it, but just being able to have reasonable deadlines just in case something happens, because the environment is, can be stressful at times.
Absolutely. So what products do you have for women who are in the trucking industry?
So we just launched our first ebook for psychological safety and psychological wellness. And what that goes into is for both leadership and the driver. Being able to talk to leadership and say, hey, this is how we can promote psychological safety, to have our drivers open up, and how drivers can communicate to their leaders and say, hey, you know what, I need some help, without the fear of being reprimanded or, having, something derogatory said to them, or having their jobs, on the line because they ask for, mental wellness help in that regard. And I feel like a lot of women and, a lot of youth steer away from the industry because they say, oh, if I get in, I have all these, I have the stress of the highway. How can I communicate? I'm going through something personal, I really need some help. All these resources that we sometimes need as drivers, how can I talk to them about that? Like, I don't feel comfortable, saying that I'm not okay, or I need a little bit of time because I'm on my monthly cycle, or something of that nature, and just being able to show women that, we are teaching leaders how to promote psychological safety, how to promote that safe space, so they can know that when they come in, that conversation is being had with leadership. And, they know how to take on this responsibility of, taking things a step further, with drivers, being able to say, it's okay, talk to me. I'm your support. I'm here for you. You know, if we don't have a resource, please let me know what we can do to implement that. And then leadership following up saying, hey, this is the steps that we're taking, either to bring in a third party like Holistic Collars, or, look into current items that they have, in house that just can be expanded and grown into bigger programs that fit the environment of the highway,
Awesome. Do we have any questions or comments? I would like to know who we have on the call. Do we have any truckers on the call or any other people in the industry?
My dad's on the call.
Oh, okay. Okay. I see. All right. So, another question I have is, what innovations or trends do you believe will be significantly impacted by health and safety in the trucking industry?
So we have a lot of great initiatives out there. I want to mention Jeremy Raymer, Project 61. He's doing a lot for the health and wellness for truckers. HD Labs, you guys you're taking the DOT physicals and you're taking it into more of an integrative aspect and going further into the physical wellness and mental health of the truck drivers. I also want to mention a company that I currently work with. It's White Mountain Trucking. They are taking an initiative of doing ride-alongs and practicing the psychological safety and bringing that into their company and seeing ways how they can improve their health and wellness within the company. They're one of a great company here in Arizona and living Arizona, and they're expanding every day. My good friend Jordan, he works there, and we talk about health and wellness and how Holistic Collars can come in and help out, and with the ergonomics, biomechanics. So there's a lot of great resources out there. You have Lindsay Trent working on the CDL programs to bring in the youth as well. Women in trucking, they talk about the psychological aspect as well, and bringing, women into the industry. So a lot of great initiatives, a lot of great folks in the industry. I can just say, all of us working together, we can all make a change. It's all about teamwork.
Absolutely. Also, the African American Women Trucking Association is on the FMCSA board as well. So we have their ear for any health and wellness initiatives that are needed. And also bringing the importance of OSHA back into the trucking industry is not separate. Again, this is something that we need to incorporate with everything that we do on a daily basis for safety. Do you have any last words or any comments or anything?
Yeah, so we're actually launching our OSHA 10 and 30 courses next year in January, and we work around the schedule of the driver, because we understand how it is. You have your 10-hour rest break. So we break it into portions in which the driver can attend virtually, and also for leadership, we have the OSHA 30 that we're going to be introducing, and it's all, you'll have the the portion of OSHA, but it's all going to be trucking based. It's going to be focused on trucking. And it can also be tailored to the type of trucking that you're involved in. Another thing we're rolling out is the women's safety, health and safety course that we're going to do next year. That comes with a book as well. Resources, tips that women can use out here on the road, from being firsthand on the highway, how they can have conversations with leadership, how can they open up that communication and everything, and going back to psychological safety. So we have that rolling out. We have a bunch of content coming out, just having that discussion, putting that out there. And then in 5 years, we should be all good to go with the medical stuff to help you guys out there.
Awesome. I love it. Could I take these courses as a dispatcher to be able to teach the drivers? So she would like to take OSHA 10 and 30.
She would like, and is that would you like to take the 30 for leadership?
She's a dispatcher, so she wants to teach the drivers on how to do OSHA training.
Does she want to be like an OSHA trainer, like OSHA 501 trainer, to be able to teach them OSHA 10, or would you just like to obtain the knowledge and then develop a program in-house?
Could you clarify, Tarika? Just obtain knowledge and develop in-house. Okay.
Sure. Most definitely. I can help you out with that. That rolls out in mid-January. We'll be rolling out OSHA 10 and 30, and that can be, tailored to whatever kind of truck driving you're doing, whether if it's flatbed, dry van, reefer. And it's always, like I said, we'll have the OSHA aspect. We'll have all the mandatory items that we need in that class. And then we will also focus, like I said, everything on the trucking industry.
So as far as DOT physicals, you would need to have either a FMP or an MD do those physicals. There are numerous ways around that, but you just need a partnership with someone with a higher license. So, I mean, again, if you're getting into like occupational health services, we can talk about that a little bit later. You have my contact information. You can just shoot me an email and I can help you with that. You're welcome. So yeah, it was such a pleasure having you tonight. You are a wealth of knowledge. You're very passionate about what you do. We definitely need your services in this industry. Again, me seeing a lot of the people in the emergency settings and in the hospital settings, and then they come into the clinic. There's a lot of issues that correlate with the two. So we need more recognition on, mental health and wellness, and also how, all these things can come together. So I always geek out, and I'm always excited to see someone who is just as passionate as I am about the things that are going on, especially for truckers who provide the services that they provide for us, because without them, we would be without a lot. So you're amazing. So whoever was on the call, or if I have your email, that I shot you an email for the link this evening, you will get a copy of her ebook. Do you want to go a little bit further into the ebook, because there were some links and stuff like that in there as well?
Yeah, totally. I just want to say firsthand, Natasha, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge as well. Like I said, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm out there learning from everybody. You guys are doing great things for the truckers. Just taking that step further with the DOT physicals and going more into that, care for them. That's huge. So I respect you for that. I look up to you for that. That's awesome. I love what you're doing.
Thank you so much. All righty. So you guys look out for your email for the final ebook. And thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, guys. Take care.